Okay, the purpose of this video is to remove the bypassed shaft assembly with all its components and renew that assembly. Tools you'll need today will be 4mm Allen key, 10mm wrench, masking tape or a scriber. I'll explain that later. The kit that you've received has some copper coat in it. You'll need a small hammer and something like WD-40 or penetrating oil. So to start the process off, you would have removed the right hand side panel and the top plate, of course, that's out the way, the door's open. So what I'd like you to do to begin with, before we do anything, is just apply a little bit of the WD-40 to all of the bolts, just a little squirt. Just be careful not to over squirt. Also, it's good to give it a little squirt here and these two. With a rag, just make sure that WD-40 doesn't dribble down the side, so just tuck it in there. So allow that to soak in for a few minutes. So while that's happening, or after that's happened, you want a little hammer. We're going to hit these bolts, but not very hard, so we're just tapping them gently. So it just breaks the freeze. Once they've been heated, they tend to freeze, so just the top ones only, don't do anything down here. Once that's done, they'll become much easier to undo. So in this case, I'm using a drill with a 10mm socket instead of a spanner, but either way, it'll do. This plate should come off fairly easily. If you find it hard to get off, you may need something like a small builder's chisel or something just to get in there. But that should come off quite easily. So, tap. Okay, with that off, we're going to now undo the bypass plate, axle and bolts appropriately. So once again, we're going to use the CRC on the bolts down here, the 3 that hold the axle, and on the right hand side we have a retainer which holds the axle on. We'll do that as well. So give that some time, and also just a little bit of a tap as well. It won't hurt anything tapping it. Just freeze up the bolts. Right, so all bolts are the same size. They're all M6. Makes it nice and easy. And the retainer you will need your spanner for. So that's the retainer, one side. We then move the hinge out of the way, and the bypass plate itself, we can just slide that towards the back of the fire inside. It's quite safe to do that, it won't be in the way. Now we'd like you to change the rope that's in here at the same time. That's also supplied in your spare parts kit. That's just like changing any rope in a door, so just fit it in nice and neatly. If it's a bit long, trim it, but just tuck it in nicely. That'll be nice and easy. So now we're going to remove these components. So we want to undo this. It's really quite loose. Just loosen the other ones off. We want to loosen the one on the right hand side. And these two here just leave for a few moments. So we're going to undo this assembly. So put your hand inside just to catch it. Supplied your kit are some replacement bolts as well in case something shears off or you lose one. So there's some spare bits in there. Okay, we can just let that fall because it's in its own assembly. Right, so we're going to remove the old washers, the arm, the bush that was supplied, and all this is supplied in your kit as new components. And we'll go through next and show you how to assemble that. Okay. This part of the video is probably the most important part. We need to make sure when we change this L-shaped lever with the new one supplied, which is a little wider, we need to make absolutely sure it's in the correct position on its slide. If it's adjusted incorrectly, the fire will not work. The timing will be all wrong when the bypass drops down. So two ways it can be done. With a sharp scriber, you can put a witness mark on so you know where it was, or an even simpler way, just use a piece of masking tape. And just sit it across the top, so you know it's exactly on the top. And we can undo these two. The WD-40 really does work well once it's been allowed to soak in, so do let it soak in for a few minutes. With the kit you're getting longer bolts for this because you've got a wider part to put on. So there are washers and bolts in there for you. So you're going to be using the new bolts. You're going to insert this piece in and slide it up to your tape and lock and secure it, and then that's it, that part done. Cool. Done. With the new part supplied, I'll come in the bag like this. There's a few spare bolts and nuts with it, so we just need to be careful. We'll undo these. Now the really important part here is to apply the copper coat. Don't be scared of the copper coat, apart from getting it on your hands like raspberry jam, but you want to use a lot of it. You know, don't be scared. Don't put too little on. So we're just going to go over the diameters, the outside diameters, spread it around a bit like jam. Try and keep it off your hands, it's the worst thing to get off. So that's on the diameters there. We want to put it on the faces of the washer as well, just so it can turn. That washer goes on, the stainless washer goes on the shaft. That's going on there. A bit more copper coat just around the washer. And we're going to insert this on the inside. So looking at your fire, the door's there, the arm must go to the back of the fire. So it's going to be inserted in there. It'll just stay there for a second. The new bronze bush has a step on it. The small step needs to go inside, so it's going to be pointing inside. Once again, liberally apply the copper coat on all faces. So you're going to go both sides plus in the hole and on the other side. Just take your time and smear that round so it's nicely coated. Hold that shaft in the centre. Place that in. That's it. We're now ready to reinstall the arm assembly, so that's good. Okay, we'll keep holding this. Now, picking up the assembly, just got to be careful to align it correctly. So we do want this rod arm to be vertical, so we're going to put that on there. It slides onto the bearing, that's nice. And we're going to slide the arm on. So inside with the arm, you can lift up the roller, the arm inside, and lift it up and down until that square sits in there nicely. Keep your hand inside, it's much easier. Tighten this one up. So with that secured, to check to make sure it is working correctly, everything must be free and moving nice and easily. So this arm's moving nice and easily. To check the central one, you're going to lift up the counterbalance weight and just lift it up and down. It should move very easily, and the shaft and the little roller inside, you'll see that all move nice. Once the bypass plate's been assembled, in this case it's not, but once it's assembled and the shaft put back in place in reverse order, you'll need to reinstall the cover or inspection plate. So use Mani-Seal with a gun with a nozzle and just put a small bead right around the entire periphery, lower your plate onto it and refasten these series of bolts you've got here. They don't need to be too tight. They're just, when you nipped up, the Mani-Seal will spread out and that's just fine. Nip them up, job done, and then of course the cover goes back on, and then you can test run the fire.